Hey guys, how's it going? Let's talk about the Suicide Squad 2021. Over the weekend, I finally got a chance to watch the reboot of the Suicide Squad movie, the Suicide Squad 2 movie, as some people are calling it. It's basically a reboot of the original movie or an extension of that universe. There are some characters that return, and there are some characters that are persona non grata in this actual film. This, of course, is not a review, it's a British fan's retrospective thoughts and opinions. But this time I will have no choice but to talk about some of the things that took place in this movie. Or should I say controversial movie, because to be honest, once again, DC seemed to have messed up whatever they had before. I wasn't a huge fan of the previous Suicide Squad film, but I did feel that that film had some redeeming qualities, and of course, featuring the likes of Batman, even if in cameos, there was quite a lot to pick out of the 2016 Suicide Squad film. What's difficult, in my opinion, is the fact that they kind of introduce us to a new set of super villains or super vigilantes, whatever you would refer to these Suicide Squad members as. And a percentage of them, a high percentage of them, are killed almost immediately at the start of the film. These characters have almost, if not no, introduction to the film themselves. They're basically we're just told who these people are. You get a look into some of the characters from the DC universe that have got obviously reputations in other like comic book series from other characters, etc. And there are some interesting characters that are killed quite early on in the film. I mean, to be perfectly honest, like, I'll be straight with you guys. Once I started seeing how quickly that these characters were dying, I stopped taking the movie seriously, because it was obvious what was happening here. These characters were being used as cannon fodder for the other characters. And, you know, they've obviously got to do business, but I didn't like this. This was basically them telling you, oh, don't care about any of the characters at any time in this film. So if you actually do care about any of the characters, stop doing that right now. They kill an animal-like character called Weasel because they didn't know if it could swim or not and dropped him into water. They also kill a character called Blackguard, who's a traitor who gives up the team's location to the Corto Maltese army and then has his face shot off. There's a character called Javelin who carries a javelin, who is dying and gives the javelin to Harley Quinn. And of course, Harley Quinn, spoiler alert, uses the javelin to actually defeat the big bad kaiju, because despite the fact that this film is based on them going to Corto Maltese, which is a fictional Caribbean or Hispanic island in the Caribbean somewhere, where they, you know, are doing tests and stuff like that, and the area was heavily influenced by German and American people after World War II. But yeah, they use some of the things later on in the film, but there's not enough. If I'm perfectly honest, and I am waffling a little bit right now, this film was one of the worst superhero films that I have seen myself. This felt like it had absolutely no place or business being part of the DC cinematic universe. You know, characters like TDK, the detachable kid. What use did he have? He clearly showed you how he doesn't really have an advantage in this sort of environment. And these characters were fully fledged villains and superheroes, or whatever, vigilantes, whatever they were at the time of when this film was filmed. So it's difficult because no one's ever been introduced to any of these characters. Unless you read the comic books, we have no idea, you know, like Mongol characters like that. Like, where do they come from? Give us a little bit of a background story into who this character is, at least. You know what I mean? Like, DC could have solved this problem by just having multiple shorts being released online to give us an update into who these characters are. Maybe they did, and maybe I just missed that, but it wasn't information that I was savvy to. But yeah, to get to the actual plot line of the film, They go to this Corto Maltese island, this fictional island. They take on the army there. They hold them off. They are there to destroy certain information. They get to a building where they have been told that there is this mythological beast that has been kept captive, and it's been growing in size, and apparently it's got some special ability where it takes over the mind of certain people. And as this kaiju, as they call it, has been growing over the years, it's become more powerful, but it has to be locked up in this Yeldenheim or Heldenheim like prison sort of structure thing where they do tests and stuff. And of course, the information in this building is what the Suicide Squad is looking for. And they end up where they go to find whatever's going on, and the building ends up erupting because there's a big war between them and the army, of course, and the structure of the building ends up getting broken. And then the beast ends up escaping, and they refer to it as a kaiju, a giant monster. You know, like you could think of like Godzilla and King Kong. It's a giant starfish with an eye in the middle. I forget what the actual Stardo or Star something the supervillain is called. And it has the ability to send out these little stars versions, like little versions of itself, and take over the mind of humans. Like it wipes their face out and they live on their face, and then they all are controlled by one entity, meaning that if his leg gets hurt, all of the people's leg gets hurt. You can see this later on in the movie as they start to fight and then take on the kaiju beast. And in the end, you know, spoiler alert, they do manage to actually defeat the kaiju. But I'm not going to, and I have kind of brushed over the plot line of the story because, of course, there is so many of these characters that die in the film. Polka Dot Man dead. Rick Flag ends up dead. He's the Argos team leader. He gets turned on by another character in the film because there is a hidden secret here. Amanda Waller hasn't just sent the Suicide Squad because there's weird things happening in Corto Maltese. She sent them because this is an American government screw up and they are trying to cover it up. And at all costs, they will cover this up. Trust me, certain characters even get turned on, like I just said. Idris Elba refuses to actually join the team in the first extent, but they managed to actually get his character, a Bloodsport, to join. In the end, Waller ends up using the information she has on Idris Elba's daughter to use him to get him to be the basic team leader. Now, there is actually another character who you would consider being the team leader who actually turns out to be a traitor. Spoiler alert, that character is played by John Cena, the peacemaker, who doesn't turn out to be so much of a peacemaker, but just a problem solver, is what I would really refer to this character as. For those people who waited this long, who wondered why it's taken so long for me to mention John Cena's character in this, I'm going to be perfectly honest and say John Cena is very much like Hulk Hogan. He doesn't really have a place in these types of movies, but film studios keep booking him because of his stardom within the WWE, etc. My thing would be, Cena, go back to wrestling and help out the WWE in their struggling war against AEW. Stay away from the movies. I don't want to see you in any movie like this ever again. To be honest, your character was horrible. Idris Elba as well has a fear of rats that turns up randomly in the film. And of course, one of the main characters who also survives, called Ratcatcher 2, a girl who uses the ability that her dad passed on to her to summon the rats that live in the city. It's quite a effective trick. If you actually see the movie itself, guys, you'll see how effective that rats can be. But the lack of build for certain characters and then building certain characters from the start, like Savon, giving us a tease that he might be a great character and then immediately killing the guy off. Characters like Boomerang, Captain Boomerang, who was in the previous movie, being killed off. King Shark being completely useless in the film apart from eating people. But I just didn't like the comedy, slapstick comedy mixed in there with some serious gore and other stuff like that. It didn't work for me. This movie was not a great movie. I'm going to give this, if I've not already given it a rating, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I definitely recommend watching it, but watch it with your eyes wide open, guys. It's not the best film. Amanda Waller was completely insufferable in this film as well. I wasn't even going to get into it because I'd have just ended up ranting. And King Shark, I didn't get to mention anything too much about him or Ratcatcher 2, but they were there. Please like, share, subscribe, and of course, stay tuned for more.